Bigger footy time. We are back to review round 20, and it's pretty quiet in this studio. I don't have Patto next to me. All I've got is Link, and then we've got JJ via video link. But how you doing, Link? What's happening?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's changed a bit in the last couple of weeks. We had a full studio. Now it's just you and me, but hopefully we get a bit of Adam's aura a bit later on.
Well,
we'll wait and see.
Yeah, you've just given away potentially the title of the segment last week. That was originally Patto's Field, but we had a bit of a think about it. We got some of the heads together in the office, and we've come up with Adam's aura, but there is no Patto, so Adam's aura may not even happen. But we are joined, of course, via video link by Josh Jenkins. How are you, JJ?
Morning, good morning. Now, Simon, tell me, how was it at Platform 38 last night? Now, we're recording Monday morning. How was it, the greatest ever comeback in AFL, VFL history? You're a diehard and tortured saint. How was it when the famous young lady stood up on the table and said, knock, knock?
Well, Josh, I'd love to say I knew. All I can tell is via videos and TikToks and Instagrams. I wasn't at the game. No, very disappointing.
Oh.
Funnily enough, too, my partner Ash, she is a D's fan, so it was really set up on a platter for us both to go. But we were away for a family birthday, and we didn't get back till late yesterday. So we just watched it on the couch, and it was a pretty awkward last couple of minutes. I can tell you that much. But yeah, what a random game, what a random finish. JJ, I'll start with you on it. At what point in that last quarter did you start to believe that the D's had completely stopped and the Saints made a roll over them?
Well, you could definitely see the D's had stopped, and perhaps to the point of, I saw some vision of Cozzy Pickett on the bench, and he looked basically just resigned to the fact, well, you know what, it's in the bag. I'd like to be on the ground, but it's in the bag. Simon Goodwin, he's always stone-faced on the bench. He doesn't, for a coach that coaches from the bench, and when they coach from the bench, they seemingly do it because they want to engage with players. He almost never engages with his players down there. He's always got the headset on, which is a different way to go about it. But it never really felt live until it was live. Until Nasiah took that 1v2 hanger in the forward 50, I didn't really believe. So, all hail the great man. What an individual performance. I see. And now Champion Data have got a bit to answer for. Round 20's player ratings have come out, Link, and Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller, I believe, was either 4th or 5th ranked for the round.
Wow, I mean that just screams to me that we're just looking at it as a data point and a statistic. Surely your ranking points go up by tenfold when you take the hanger to draw the game with 20 odd seconds to go, and then with 8 seconds to go, you take another mark inside 50 and you go back and win the game. Plus, you've had 34 and 4, so many score involvements. I think he had 6 or 7 clearances. Like that is, that's astonishing to me. What also was astonishing is just in those kinds of close moments, guys, you just know when something's going to happen. And when Clayton Oliver did not even hit the scoreboard from 20 metres out, you just kind of felt, geez, something's going to happen here. Something is going to happen here. But just unbelievable. I think even some of the other players that probably deserve some credit, like Max Hall, who was best clubman a couple of weeks ago. His last quarter was unbelievable. I think he had 5 score assists in the last quarter or something like that, playing in the middle of the ground. It really just all went perfectly well for the Saints. Josh, right now, if you were Ben Williams, what would you be commanding Nasiah should be on next year? What sort of contract figure should be thrown in front of him?
Well, I was making this claim on here and on the radio about Nasiah and his people, in terms of Ben Williams, his manager, refusing to take anything less than what Tom De Koning is being offered. Now, people are saying, oh, come on, you got to understand the market. Of course I understand the market, but the reality is Nasiah can sit there and say, I am worth more to this club than Tom De Koning is, therefore pay me more. Now, that's a simplistic way to look at it, and people will say, well, why shouldn't you sacrifice and take a little bit less? Well, if he's really undecided about where he wants to play and he wants to sign a short-term deal to stay, then maybe you max out on the dollars so that he does stay. So he's worth whatever you can afford to give him to ensure that he stays, and that's the same for the Adelaide teams. He is worth. I mean, he's worth to Adelaide. Now they're not going to be able to pay him as much potentially. He is worth so much to the Crows because they are the Crows, and we'll get to them. They are right there. They might be good enough to win it this year. Who knows? But if they were to add someone like him, then blimey, they'd be premiership favourites next season. So he's a superstar. 34-4 is some kind of game. He wasn't kicking the ball that well across the day. He was sort of scrubbing a few. It seemed like he was just having a day where he was kicking him off the instep just for whatever reason. And then in the clutch moment, he came up unbelievably clutch. Now, that 666 rule at the end, the warning, I think it's hard to be ultra critical of Melbourne except for one aspect, and I'll get to that in a minute. I listened to a lot of breakfast radio this morning. Even Chris Scott, the coach of the Cats, admitted he didn't know whether the 4 players at the centre bounce had to be there or not, or they could swap, or Max Gawn could get behind the ball. It all sort of happens quite quickly. It's difficult. So I give the players largely a pass for that, and even Simon Goodwin, largely speaking, I give them a pass. Jack Viney's the one for me. Why he's not rolling back? Why? Now, maybe it's because he's an inside mid and he doesn't know the wing roll that well. But how he's not instructed, because he's on the bench side of the ground, so he should be able to hear and look around and get some instruction from the bench. Why he's not rolling back into the exact space Wanganeen-Millera takes that mark, I'll never know.
But also, if you look at the opposing wing, I don't know who the D's player was on the opposing wing, but they were standing next to Mason Wood. They were on the point, like the edge of on the other side. So surely you're mirroring what you're seeing at the other. So I'm going off track here though, because I've just seen a video on Instagram that's just been posted by some kind of Saints page, but the Saints had a bit of a catch-up last night, a few drinks, and there is a video going around of Nasiah Wanganeen-Millera sitting on Ross Lyon's shoulders after a few jars, and they're all chanting and singing and everything like that. So I'm not going to say that means he's 100% signed the dotted line, but things look pretty happy if Ross Lyon's got Nasiah on the shoulders, which is funny to see. Wow. But to your point, Josh, I know you're saying maybe it's not Goodwin and maybe we're not sure who's at fault and the 666, and it's all very random. But like, if you've got Max Gawn, Jack Viney, Christian Petrarca, you compare that list of leaders to the Saints. I don't understand how they could fall so short.
And just on that, JJ, how many games would Melbourne have played in the last 10 years where the best players on the AFL website for Melbourne, Gawn, Petrarca, Oliver, Viney, Rivers, Fritsch.
Yeah.
Like that's their best players. They're all named in the best and they don't win the game. That would not happen very often.
They are just full-time professionals at winning most of the stats that matter and looking like the better team, but just never winning. Like, they have done it time and time and time again. I haven't had a look at the numbers from the game, but across the past, since their premiership, basically, their record of winning the inside 50s and winning the contested possession count but losing the game is just beyond belief. It just beggars belief. Their inefficiency inside forward 50. Now, they were pretty good yesterday. So, for 3 quarters, they were a very good football team and they played good footy. So, we're not here to crucify them, but they just invent ways to lose games of footy. Now, at the end of the day, the win yesterday is meaningless for both teams in terms of the overall scheme of where you're going, but who knows? Maybe it is just a little trigger point for Nasiah to think, this is not such a bad place after all. Maybe it is something that the Saints can build on. I agree, Max Hall, they've found one, and he's a gun forward mid, however you want to play him, he's a gun. So if all that comes at the end of the season is finding a few, then that's going to be enough.
Absolutely. Moving on, though, because we're going to talk a little bit later on, just looking back at that 2021 draft. I want to talk to some of the performances over the weekend and the players from the 2021 draft that absolutely dominated. But just in general, guys, the game yesterday, the Saints game, kind of saved the weekend a little bit because, JJ, you had on the rundown what a woeful weekend, and we had to make a little bit of an update because Sunday wasn't too bad in the end. But just going back to some of the games we witnessed, 93 points on Friday night, the Dogs over the Bombers. Saturday night was just an absolute dumpster fire, nearly 200 points combined losing margin across the 2 games. It really was.
199.
Pardon?
199.
I know. Unbelievable. It really was tough footy to watch. I'm pretty keen to start with North here, JJ, because you've spoken about them a fair bit. This is the 10th time this year they've conceded over 100 points, and defensively they just looked like an absolute rubble.
Absolutely. So it's 10:30 Monday morning. Now, tonight, and maybe you'll hear this after the fact, but there'll be however many shows on TV tonight. First Crack probably did it on Sunday night as well. There'll be vision from behind the goals, and it will be beyond belief. It will be hard to comprehend what the hell North Melbourne are doing. They've got experienced players behind the ball. They've got experienced players around the ball. So it's a cop-out to say that, young players don't know what they should be doing in any given moment. Jeremy Cameron was just hanging out the back. It was like he was playing goal shooter and he wasn't allowed outside the 50-metre arc. And after, look, early in the game, if you want to play a system that means your defence gets really high and tries to compress the game, that's fine. Knock yourself out. But when he's got 2 or 3 goals in the first 10 or 15 minutes of the first quarter, maybe assign someone to him. And I watched him. I was there calling the game for SEN. He's walking around the back of stoppage. Griffin Logue's just daydreaming, not paying him any attention, not close enough at all. And then he just starts to take a few chances because he knows that the Cats are winning the footy endlessly. Like the Roos system defensively is what teams used to do against us in 2016, and then they started to change because we're getting all these goals out the back. Okay, let's have a little bit more depth. And let's have a goalkeeper, and let's try and protect our goals a little bit more. I have no idea what North Melbourne are trying to do defensively. And then offensively, the amount of times they win the ball back within 15 metres of their own goal and kick it sideways and lock themselves in a back pocket and are forced down the line or try and make something up through the middle of the ground and turn it over. It's hard to identify what the hell they are trying to do as a footy club at the moment. And Unfortunately, Leggy, that lands on the coach. It has to land on the coach.
Absolutely, it does. I think, speaking to some Hawthorn people a couple of years ago when the succession plan was happening, a lot of them were happy that Clarko was handing over the reins, and now he's obviously moved on. And in 3 years, North Melbourne have nothing to show for it. I mean, don't get me wrong, Alistair Clarkson is one of the best coaches we've seen in the modern era. Clearly, you don't coach 4 premierships if you're not. But I think there is a time where the game can sometimes go past people, or maybe he's just not ready for a rebuild. He coached the Hawks to a couple of different rebuilds and regenerations, and then it was kind of time to go. He's been around footy for 20 years now, and maybe sometimes the game just goes past you. I said it to you guys, I think, in the WhatsApp, like, no offense to Jeremy Cameron, I love him as a player, but is that the worst? Maybe worst isn't the right word, but is that kind of like the most irrelevant 11-goal haul you've ever seen? It was easy. He cruised. It was the
easiest. It was definitely the easiest. And I was just watching him because I was having a chuckle because I used to get criticised for kicking those types of goals, but he was genuinely just taking a chance on the fact that North would turn the ball over. Now, North were, and I was talking to a few of the Cats boys afterward. They couldn't really understand or believe the way North were trying to attack. So North were trying to kick it in between layers, kick it. So Geelong are set up in a bit of a zone. So you might have one defender 20 metres away and then one 40 metres away and then one 60 metres away. And North are trying to just drop it in a bucket 25 metres away, trying to land it in a specific area. And these days, good defences just come forward and turn it over. They come forward and they spoil it. They come forward and they take intercept marks. And the amount of time Saturday night, the Cats guys were able to come forward and either spoil it back their way or even take an intercept mark and turn that ball over. The offensive system looks like they want it to be Hawthorn of 2015. Well, I got news for them. They haven't got the kickers Hawthorn had during their premiership years. So it feels, Alistair Clarkson feels a little bit like Bill Belichick at the moment, to be honest. When you've got Tom Brady, you are the best coach that we've ever seen. And when he had Buddy and Hodge and Roughhead and all those guys, he's maybe the best coach we've ever seen. But when you lose Tom Brady and you've got the washed-up version of Cam Newton, or you've got Tim Tebow trying to play quarterback, you're not that good a coach.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I mean, personnel certainly does does make things a lot better for you. But certainly going to be interesting this week because you expect the Roos to respond. Well, they've got the Saints, so they've got potentially a winnable game coming. But if the Saints were to have an easy win, I just wonder what that means for Clarko moving forward and what that's going to mean in terms of pressure on him and on Arden Street. Moving on to the Crows, they were top of the ladder for about 12 hours before the Pies went and beat the Tigers. But last week, JJ, you didn't say they couldn't win the flag, but you sort of thought maybe they were 12 months early on in terms of their trajectory. And, I mean, they just keep coming. The draw opens up. It almost feels like they're a lock to at least get a top 2 finish this year, which clearly means a home final. What did that? I mean, again, it was a showdown win against Port Adelaide. It probably didn't mean a lot, but in terms of the win-loss ratio and where they're positioned now, they're as good a chance as anyone.
Yeah, they are. They've got a great run in. They've got a great record. They've got a couple of tests, which I think is good. You want a couple of tests on the way in. So they've got the Hawks this Friday night in Adelaide. They should win that game, but it'll be a good test for both teams. And maybe I was off the mark because I didn't know or I had queries on whether Jake Saligo was that guy around the ball, 35 and 2 from him. Peatling as well, he's been largely a bit of a stopper and a run-with guy. He had 26 and kicked 1 goal too. So Curtin was big in the second half, had a massive second half. Maybe he is the rising star, 22 and 8 tackles. Ben Keys, again, he just refuses to take no for an answer. 21, 3 goals, 4. He could have had a gigantic night. And they used the thrill seeker in the ruck a bit more. And this is going to be a good problem to have for them, because I have been hearing from Adelaide people for quite some time that some people around the club think he is a ruckman, think he's could be the best ruckman in the game. He might not have the size of Gawn or some of those bigger ruckmen like Tim English, but he's unbelievably mobile. He's got great skills. That goal he kicked on his left foot from outside 50 was just superb. So he's developing so nicely for them. He's going to be their lead dog, whether he's 60% forward and 40% in the ruck. I'm not sure whether he plays more forward now that O'Brien signed. Who knows? But he's one of the most exciting players in the game. Tex did a good job. He keeps on keeping on and keeps on keeping the knockers at bay. And overall, they're an incredibly well-built footy club. Worrell was good again. Sam Berry kicked a couple of goals. Neil Bullen played a great game. So they don't really want for anything, Simon.
Yeah, and especially now that they've potentially locked away top 2, if you just look at them at Adelaide Oval, and I mean, we obviously don't know who they're going to face yet, whether it's potentially Brisbane or someone like that. Who do you think in the sort of the run home, JJ, would be a team that the Crows would feel confident about out of that top 4 mix, and potentially who they could play?
Well, I think on home soil they'll be supremely confident against anyone. Geelong beat them in gather round, but that was a long time ago. Probably irrelevant. Adelaide are a much more powerful unit and consistent unit and a deeper unit than what we saw in gather round. I mean, you can argue Brisbane should have beaten them in Adelaide a few weeks ago, but they didn't. So Adelaide at home, they'll be supremely confident. It's always 50,000+ in the house at Adelaide Oval. A Thursday or a Friday night qualifying final would be a daunting task for any type of opposition. But having said that, you've got a team like the Giants, who we'll get to in a minute. Fremantle have got some really good wins on the road. The Cats have beaten them and have pretty good record at Adelaide Oval, and Brisbane can win anywhere, anytime if they need to. So it's just... I think we are going to be blessed with an amazing final series. We've had to put up with a lot of garbage throughout the regular season. It feels like we're going to get one of the great final series of all time.
Moving on to the Giants, on Friday night in the Battle of the Bridge, midway through the second quarter, even at half-time, you probably felt, geez, are the Giants doing this again? They've shown so much promise. It looks like they've got their game back, and the Swans were all over them, but they flicked the switch, and sort of begs a question, JJ, does anyone in the comp have as much offensive weaponry and firepower as the Giants do when they want to flex their muscles like that?
Yeah, they're one of the most watchable teams in the competition when they play in that manner. So, what were they, 28 points down at halftime? I think they were down by 35. That was the most at some points.
43-9, I think, was the worst.
Yeah. So it was pretty daunting and pretty grim for them. And equally, it was okay. Well, maybe Sydney do have a part to play in this season on the run in, but it was 12 goals to 1. 12 goals to 1 in the second half, and probably less about Sydney and more about the power and the firepower, as you mentioned, of the Giants. I just love watching them when they get up and about. They've got 3 really good users behind the footy and guys who really set them up. Ash is a player who runs and guns. Didn't have his biggest night, but he does set them up. Whitfield just keeps getting the job done. Interesting. I found it really fascinating. So the last 4 times these two teams have played, Jordan's gone to Whitfield. And I probably agreed with the decision to go to Finn Callaghan with Jordan because of how Callaghan had been playing. But we watched that game. Callaghan probably has the most effective 21 possession game we've ever seen, wins the medal, and Whitfield gets off the chain and has 30 down back. So I guess after the fact, now hindsight's perfect, of course, but after the fact, you probably think to yourself, well, okay, do you stick with what you know's worked, and we know that we've been able to quell Whitfield, and do you just let Callaghan do his thing? Because we're getting to the point with Finn Callaghan. I'm calling him Finn Judd. He's close to one. Like, I think Wanganeen Miller is close to untaggable because of his physical tools and the high speed running he can do. I think Finn Callaghan's power makes him borderline untaggable.
I tend to agree. The way he is able to break away from stoppage, but not only when as you say, not only when the ball's in his hands, but the way he runs from contest to contest, stoppage to stoppage, it's genuine power running. And I must admit, perhaps I hadn't watched him closely enough up until this year. I didn't know he had that breakaway speed in him. It looked like a lot of his footy he was in cruise mode, but you've definitely seen this year. Maybe it's an instruction from the coaching department. I'm not sure, but it has felt like this year, like they've instructed him to really run away and push and sort of power run contest to contest. It makes him, as you say, very, very tough to stop. Speaking of tough, I don't know if a lot of it was tough, but Link, what did you make of some of the feistiness in the Battle of the Bridge? There was plenty of lip going around. Toby Green's comments about Tom Papley being overweight. I think Tom Papley might have even said that Toby Green's skin folds weren't quite right. There's a lot going on.
It's probably more of a JJ thing from someone who's been in the heat of the battle, but as a fan, I thought it was awesome. I thought it was really enjoyable.
We need it. I think it's great. It should be something that's celebrated, provided nothing untoward is said.
I think it was. I love how Toby at halftime. He had 3 possessions at halftime.
Yep.
Toby he ended up with 9 touches and a goal, so he hasn't set the world on fire. Especially we know how good he can be. So I think the balls for him to make that comment when his team is down, when he hasn't had that much of an impact of the game, is awesome. And then, well, we obviously know what happened on the scoreboard. And how the second half played out, but I thought it was really ballsy from Toby, and I really liked it. And as long as there's nothing too foul at play, then I think it's good.
Agreed.
And there's nothing. I mean, no one's getting offended by that. No one involved in that is getting offended by that. Like, if someone wants to jump up from nowhere and say, "Oh, that's offensive," then whatever, you can please yourself. But no one involved in that is offended, and I'm pretty sure. If you watch the video, I'm pretty sure the Swans boys and likely Papley are chirping at Toby Green whilst he's being interviewed. So, and you can imagine, I've done some interviews on walking off at halftime, and they're pre-organised. So, you're told, okay, Cam Mooney from Fox Footy is going to come grab you at halftime as you walk off. Don't stop walking. Just make sure you answer a couple of questions, keep walking, and head in. And I'm like, oh, God, I've had 4 touches. I've got to speak to Cam Mooney. So Toby's in that situation. And I've got no doubt the Swans boys in the background are saying, as if you'd interviewed Toby Green, he hasn't touched the footy. Now, remembering, the Swans are up by 28 points, so they're feeling pretty good about themselves. They're a pretty lippy team, the Swans. They've got guys who like to talk. McInerney's a bit of a talker. Chad Warner's a bit of a talker. And we love that. Rampy and Toby Green were going back and forth. So I've got no doubt they were getting into Toby. And in that moment, Toby's not thinking about how many touches he hasn't had. He's just firing bullets. He's just firing shots, and he's thinking to himself, this halftime can't come quick enough, can't go quick enough so I can get back out there and get stuck in. So I loved it. I think Tom Papley's been firing some shots off to the Aus-American Aces in readiness for Toby's appearance on that. So looking forward to that. But I guess the only part that you've got to include is Toby was very, very undisciplined in that first half. He was close to giving away a few free kicks more than he did, and of course he got himself suspended. And I'm glad he was suspended for that, because even though the contact and the impact may not have been there, that was an average thing to do. It was an ordinary thing to do, and I'm glad in terms of the action that he got a week for it. I wish he was playing this week, but he deserved a week.
Yeah, great. I think we'd all love him to be out there this week against the Dogs. It's going to be a massive clash for both teams, but pretty disappointing act. Like, I think it's fine to let your emotion.
So unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's be clear. It wasn't just the chirping at halftime. There was chirping. Like, Tom Papley kicked a goal and he was running. There was a lot of bumping off the ball, and clearly there was a lot of heat, a lot of animosity, a lot of fire in the game. And I think it's 2 footy clubs that probably are 2 of the best when it comes to getting on the lip, and then you factor in the fact that it's a derby as well. But pretty disappointing from... Look, I'm probably Toby Green's biggest fan, have defended him even when it wasn't popular to defend him, but I think now that's a pretty disappointing act from a skipper to do that. It was a low act, it was stupid, and now he's cost his team. Up until up until last week, you'd say this week's game is probably the biggest game for the Giants this season when it comes to securing that final spot and trying to knock the Dogs out. So disappointing act from a skipper. Moving on, we did mention earlier on, we just wanted to revisit the 2021 draft. And, well, Link, you brought this up in the WhatsApp because this weekend we had an unbelievable set of performances from the top players in that draft. Of course, Jason Horne-Francis went number 1, but we've got Nick Daicos, we've got Wanganeen Miller, we've got Finn Callaghan, and we've got Sam Darcy. Just wanted to revisit that draft. I might start with you, JJ. If you're across the 2021 draft, if you were revisiting it now, who would be the top 3 selections you'd make in order?
Oh Christ! Jesus! If I put myself in a club recruiter's shoes, I probably think you take Sam Darcy 1. I can't believe there's a world where Nick Daicos wouldn't be number 1, but I think it'd be Darcy 1, Daicos 2, and then it's either Wanganeen Miller or Finn Callaghan at 3. So, geez,
it's tough.
There are premiership players down the list as well. So I'm going to go Darcy 1, Nick Daicos 2, Wanganeen Miller 3.
I think that's a pretty good guy. I think I'd probably say the same. I think if you're right, if you're picking for tomorrow, you want the key forward. Look, in terms of who's had the best start to their career, it's clearly Daicos. He's got the premiership. He's been just about the best player in the comp for the last
43 and 3 yesterday. Player rating of 37.2, which is more than 5 points clear of anyone else in the round.
Pretty unbelievable performance. Recency bias probably gets in the way, but I think Wanganeen Miller at 3. I kind of feel like outside of Darcy, due to his sheer size, I feel like Wanganeen Miller has got the most scope to get better. I wouldn't be shocked if in 2 years' time he maybe surpasses Daicos, which might sound crazy, but it's only because of his athletic attributes. It's not because of anything else. I just think the ability to take hangers, I think he can do everything that Daicos can perhaps do in the midfield. Daicos is cleaner and maybe a better decision maker, but Wanganeen Miller has athletic capacity and the ability to play. I think you could put him in the goal square, you could put him across half back, you could put him on a wing, and you can put him in the middle of the ground, and he'd almost dominate all of those positions. So I think I agree with your order, and maybe in a couple of years' time, Wanganeen Miller scoots up that list.
Yeah, I mean, we only really just got done raving about him, Wanganeen Miller, being able to go into the midfield and genuinely hold up as a contested ball-winning midfielder. We haven't had time to really compress that and compute that. Now he's taking hangers at full forward. Like the skill in that mark that he took is quite rare because he understood the assignment. So he was 1 against 2. He's got the pressure from behind, but he understood he had to jump early because he's not a big man. He had to jump early to get the ride and to take out that defender in front. Like, I played forward my whole life. I could never even I could never sort of bring myself and teach myself to do that. You know, some of the great forwards have that skill. Jack Revolt was someone who always could jump early to take out the defender legally in front of you and then get a play on the ball. Like Wanganeen Miller has showed that the first time I've ever seen him play as a key forward. So he's a frightening talent. But there are guns littered all over the place. I'm a massive fan of Horne-Francis. I haven't loved his season this year. He's probably been injured for a fair bit of it, but we haven't even mentioned him. He's an absolute gun. Mac Andrews contracted for 10 years. Rochelle, Josh Ward. Amos had a great first season, just showed a little bit on the weekend. Lecalier and Wilmot and Lyman have got premierships. So all the way through that draft, it's littered with good players. Sonsie and Banks look okay at Richmond. So Owens is down there as an academy pick. So it's only a few years in, but it might go down as one of the great drafts. Certainly one of the deepest drafts of all time.
Absolutely. We need to move on because there was outside of all the smashings and some of the disappointing results, one on Saturday that was probably the biggest win of the round in my view anyway, and that was the Suns over the Lions in the Q clash. Not just for the Suns' potential to make finals this year and their finishing position, but also just in terms of, I guess, putting a stake in the ground. They've been beaten up in a lot of Q clashes in the past. They get a home one, obviously, at a really pivotal time of the year. A time in the year where normally this football club goes backwards and starts to slide down the table. But JJ, that was a massive win on Saturday, and not just getting the 4 points, but the way that they did it as well was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was, and they changed their game up a little bit, so it was a bit wet in that game. But, high possession team now, that have a look at some of the numbers. Rouse had 37 and 12 tackles. That game suits him down to the ground. Anderson the same, 33 and a goal. That's what we expect from them. Interesting, Anderson had 2 goals for a long time, and then they went back and had a look at it and took one off him and gave it to Jai Farah. Hope it doesn't cost him a Brownlow vote on the last night on the Monday night of grand final week. But so Tuke Miller, this is the part probably want to focus on the most. Tuke Miller goes out, and we all know how great a player he is and how much of a loss he's probably going to be. But Fiorini and Alex Davies have come in to the midfield mix. Fiorini's been in the team. Fiorini has 32 and a goal. Really composed player, and maybe he's someone I've always thought, no, he's not quite going to make it. He's not quite going to be what they need. But maybe it's because he hasn't been able to get the midfield time. Maybe it's because those guys have been in there the whole time. So he's playing midfield now that Tuke Miller's out, had a huge game. And Davies comes in, and I've always liked Davies, and I'm not surprised that other teams are keen on him. There was a push to grab him last year, 30 disposals and 10 tackles. So he's got a bit of Matt Rowell in him as well. So those conditions suited. Jeffrey and Noble had 63 off halfback. They didn't miss Dan Rioli at all. Ainsworth had a massive game, 27 and 3. He's another one who I thought, are you going to make it? Are you going to play 140 games and have a good career, or are you going to be a real difference maker for the Suns? He looks like he's now going to be a difference maker. We all love Will Powell. We've spoken about him a fair bit. He had 26. So they've been a team who has barely touched the footy in terms of get it, one handball maybe, and let's go as far as we can. Now they're starting to possess the ball. They're starting to be able to play the game in a couple of different facets. So Suns' perspective, huge tick. Brisbane, I'll give you a mulligan because I love you and I'm a big Lions supporter. But, gee, it makes Saturday night against the Pies gigantic.
Well, it does now, doesn't it? Because just looking at the table, obviously they're in third spot. If the Pies win, you'd think just about potentially wraps up top of the table for them. But the Lions, who we all thought were clearly a top 2 team, and Josh, you've been very big on them for a long time, but all of a sudden their top 4 position is in jeopardy, which they did win a flag last year from the 5th spot on the ladder. But it makes things a lot harder if you're not finishing top 4 in 2025, that's for sure, especially with that logjam of teams around them as well. So that's a huge game now this weekend. Well,
they've got basically, so if they don't beat Collingwood at the G on Saturday night, they've got all of Hawthorn, Geelong, Hawthorn, GWS and Fremantle can leapfrog them. So there's a world where they lose this weekend and they're 7th at the end of the round. So, it's massive. That's why some of these games, all of these games where these teams are involved, and even if they're against a team they should beat, you've got to beat them. Otherwise, you really put yourself at risk. But even the GWS Bulldogs game, it feels like a game where if the Dogs don't beat the Giants, I mean, it's very hard to see the Dogs making it. They're going to be so far behind the rest of the competition. The Suns are basically on 52 points because they've got Essendon in that last game up their sleeve as well. So the Dogs are basically 2 games behind already. So not only would you be still 2 games behind, you'd be 3 games behind the Giants who would get another win on you. So, gee, some of these games mean a lot.
Absolutely, especially for the Hawks against. If the Hawks were somehow able to go to Adelaide and win, that secures their spot as well, because they're along with the Dogs probably the other team that I think are most at threat in terms of the finish, given just their tougher run. But we've got to move on to the Pies. I just wanted to talk. I know we talk about them every week, but they deserve it. But Patto's just walked into the room. We've just
strutted in.
Just strutted in. We were just about to start talking about the Pies, actually, Patto. But it's nice of you to join this far in. Just put the headset on so you can hear JJ. But Patto, firstly, welcome. How was your weekend?
It was great. It was very good. Went out to play some country footy in the wet, in the cold. Which was a bit tough, but enjoyed. Didn't really enjoy the big beltings for the first half of the round, but gee, the Giants' third quarter and the Saints' last quarter was just the spark we needed.
Absolutely. And, well, speaking of the Pies, Nick Daicos' performance is also pretty watchable. But I just wanted, JJ, your views just on their midfield mix, because we've spoken about this a little bit. I know you mentioned your thoughts around Ned Long and Tom Mitchell. Well, they both played in the same team. Don't know how much that counts because obviously they were playing the Tigers. But DeGoey played the VFL, had 19, so he's going to be back pretty soon, you'd think. Pendles was a late out, just no doubt precautionary, just giving him a bit of a rest. But this Pies midfield mix, I'm intrigued to get your views on it, JJ, just in terms of where it's going to sit leading into finals and what their best mix is around the ball.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident it won't have Long and Mitchell. They didn't play much together on the field yesterday. Because we've been talking about it, I did watch it as closely as you can from the couch, and Long started on the bench, Mitchell started at centre bounce, and vice versa at other stages in the game. So certainly Nick Daicos is going to be in there, Pendles is going to be in there. Sidebottom can be in or out, doesn't really matter for him. Crisp is almost exclusively a winger these days. So, I think unless there's a real gulf in terms of which player is playing better, I think you've got to go with Ned Long because he's a lot younger and he's potentially got a bit more to offer defensively. But Mitchell's a master because he picked up 29 disposals yesterday. Like he knows that there's a world where if he can keep picking up 28 touches a game, it's going to be pretty hard to leave him out. Maybe he's their best option as sub as well. That's the other element that they might lean into, where Tom Mitchell plays sub, and if they need him, they can just roll him through the middle.
You want me to talk about Adam Zora, do you, Sam?
Yeah, well, I mean, we spoke about it before the show that, we had this new segment for you last week, and, we let the Brains Trust come up with an idea for some names, and we got Adam Zora, and then all of a sudden you just weren't here, and I was just wondering whether there was anything from the weekend that you picked up as you roll into a podcast 40 minutes later.
I'm coming in cold, so hopefully I don't touch on anything that you've spoken about already, but the main kind of thought that I had across the weekend, and you've probably spoken about the game review that Melbourne will be going through today, and just game scenarios so important.
Yep.
Last week we saw a bit around the cowboy style tackle. Did you see that?
Yes.
Around that, what the Pies are doing. I think that just seeing teams that are very smart in certain moments around what they need to do, I think that, I know it's probably getting a little bit away from aura, vibe and feels, but just seeing teams that know what to do in any given moment. And some of the examples, around that are obviously what happened in the Melbourne Saints game with just being able to go and push around from stoppage. And I love seeing the line out. And this gets back to good coaching. I don't know how many coaches JJ's grilled and called for their heads in this podcast, but seeing the way that the Saints lined out, left side to obviously drop in that spot for NAS, for me that was it just shows sides that are actually well coached and drilled. I think earlier in the year when North didn't practice the match game scenarios, because like I said, we haven't been in the position to even get close. It just shows up. So aura this week for mine was just more around game smarts. I don't know if you can think of any other type of incidents in the game, like grabbing out of the ruck or leaving offhand hits.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because we did talk a little bit about the D's and some of the shortcomings, but I wanted to ask you two, as the two people in this podcast that have been coached at a high level, how can you plan for that? Like, you can plan for the scores are level or you're down or whatever it might be, and there's 10 seconds on the clock and there's going to be a centre bounce. But how can you plan for a centre bounce infringement, a 666 infringement, that then you've got to kind of track back? Like, that's surely a scenario that you've almost just got to rely on the brains of the 22 players you have on the field.
Yeah, pretty. You don't have a lot of time, particularly during the season. There's not a lot of time. There's no time to go through that out on the track. I can guarantee that. Maybe in theory you can have a look at it on the whiteboard, but yeah, it was a pretty random situation. I'm not even certain the umpire knew what was supposed to happen at the end. He looked a little unsure of himself. Certainly the players didn't know, and as I said earlier, like Chris Scott admitted because Ray Chamberlain come out and said that the 4 that were in the centre bounce don't have to be the 4 that are in the square when the free kick's taken. Now, I had no idea about that. No one's ever told me that. So, yeah, I can understand why they're a little bit scattered, but as we touched on, the one element that I just can't understand is, and maybe it's because he's an inside mid, is Jack Viney's positioning. He's the one who could have fixed it all and could have solved it all. But, yeah, it's a scenario beyond even the scenarios you would prepare for during the week.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a fair point. The other one is teams that go up and press in their back half but don't keep the goalkeeper at the very back of their defence. I don't know if you mentioned this, JJ, but I was listening to you talk about it on radio the other night, especially with the way North's team defence is going. They're coming right up the ground. Geelong you'd always see Jezza or Stengel or someone just anchoring right back and being able to just slice them through the middle. So I think smart's in the wet as well. At least Richmond, whilst they are struggling and a bit, are a bottom 4 side effectively, still have premiership defenders, Vlosten, Nathan Broad, that can stand behind the footy, and they just know how to anchor up perfectly and always own the dangerous space at the back. So that's one thing that North's game review this morning will be getting torn to pieces around that as well.
Yeah, there's a couple of game reviews you wouldn't really want to be in. You can take your pick across the competition. Yeah, we spoke about North's team defence. I really don't know what the heck they're trying to do defensively. Why they're trying to get so high and compress the ground, I've got no idea. It's just one handball receive or one quick kick, and particularly with the stand rule, like you can't really stop those handball receives. So it's so easy to access players out the back, especially. They didn't go near Max Holmes, and why you wouldn't go near him is just beyond belief. They didn't go near Bailey Smith. He had 43 touches. They've had a bazillion metres gained each, and those two guys are always going to bust through your zone defence, particularly if you're going to play high, because of the way they run and carry the ball and then kick it long. So bizarre defensively from the Roos, when most other teams are, as Patto said, trying to protect the back and ensure that even if their first line of defence gets broken through, they've got some protection at the back.
Now, Patto, I know you were coached by Ross Lyon, so he would probably take the cake. But JJ, I'm interested in your time in the AFL system. Who was the coach that whenever you had a review, you were a little bit scared on the Monday that they might just breathe absolute fire?
Scott Campriali was pretty
Really?
fierce. He was.
He had about 8 games, didn't he?
He because often the reviews are run by the line coaches a fair bit in terms of their actual specifics, and Campo was the midfield coach for a long time. I think he was the midfield coach the entire time I was in Adelaide, which is pretty rare because I reckon I had 3 forward coaches and 3 or 4 team defence coaches. So he was the constant around the ball, and he could deliver. No, he wouldn't spray you, but he was quite sharp with his words. He didn't misplace any words, and he could be pretty vicious in the way he went about it. So he was always one that you'd have to be wary of. And it wasn't necessarily I was a backup ruckman, so I knew I was always going to cop it in that sense. But it was more around. He was always very good at finding small moments in the game where you had a little lapse in concentration, and he would certainly get after you about it.
Well, I'm thinking when we get off air, I might have to give a few sprays here because Patto's rocked up 40 minutes late, and wherever Tom Flanagan is, I don't know. He told us that because the Swans...
I didn't know his first name was Tom.
Yeah, Flanners. So I'm calling you Josh and him Tom, being very, very formal, but someone needs to bring...
Fox footy.
Yeah, someone needs to bring some order here. I think Flanners maybe copping a bit of a bake. If the whole Jack Viney thing was don't come Monday, I think to Flanners it's don't come Tuesday after a no-show in this podcast again. But thankfully we've got Patto in here. And look, we've got to move on to the best clubman. So... last week it was Link's nomination of Isaac Heaney that got in there. Josh was happy because we finally had a superstar in the game, which just beefs up that team a little bit more. But best clubman this week, I want to go with you first, Patto, because you did drop someone in the group thread that you picked up over the weekend.
Yeah, I've gone with Brian Myers. He is the ultimate team player with the way he actually plays his footy.
Yes.
He's always looking to set everyone else up with his elite kicking skills. But he dropped a couple of nuggets in an interview with JJ on Saturday night where he runs the fantasy comps across the NBA and the NFL for all the boys at the Cats. And just spoke glowingly about Tommy Atkins, and he just sort of said he owes kind of everything to him. He'd give him the VNF this year. Yeah, so when I heard that, it's just alarm bells were ringing. Brian Myers, best clubman nomination for me this week.
That's very good. I like that. Patto. Link?
Nice.
I am going to go down a similar path from last week. We said that, JJ put it on the agenda a couple of weeks ago. He wanted a bit more star power in the team. So I put Isaac Heaney on the agenda, who got in.
Yep.
I've noticed we don't have a centre-half forward. So what I want to do is put our current full forward, Jeremy Cameron, even though he kicked 11 playing full forward on the weekend, I'm going to put him to centre-half forward. And I'm going to nominate Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller to be our full forward.
Oh, yes. Wow. Sure, I think we know what's going to happen with the bigger footy community. I'm sure the votes will.
I'm going to have in the post, I'll say, playing at full forward.
Yeah, I love that.
We just need NAS to not do the post-match presser. I think he needs a bit of media training.
I think, good on him. He seems to me like he's a pretty shy kid, and all he cares about is playing footy, which is clearly showing, because even with all the pressure and the the media talk around him, he's still performing very well. But JJ, who have you got? Who's your?
I've got no idea. I'm gonna.
Can you buy into this segment?
Please. It's your favourite segment.
No. I am going to just challenge the bigger footy community with the way they rate performances, elite performances, and I'm going to put up whispering Nick Daicos, and 42-3 up against 34-4, and see what the bigger footy community can come up with. So just trying to work out whether he might have had a goal assist or something team friendly. He did. He had a goal assist. So team friendly Nick Daicos, 42 disposals, 14 score involvements, 3 goals, 1 goal assist, took another contested mark. He's turned into an absolute contested marking monster, and he had 8 inside 50s. So let's see how they vote.
This segment is an absolute shambles.
I'd like to know whether Nick is getting around some of the younger players at the team.
Well,
he is a young player.
He's 22.
I know that, but the Brett Delidio example of a star coming in, rising star, playing senior footy, is he still hanging around with people from his draft class? That will be the determining factor.
It's actually interesting to go back to his draft class. There's basically no one left.
It's just him.
I'll have to fact check that, but it almost he may be Collingwood's last player left from that draft. I'm actually going to go I'll actually get that.
Well, they gave away enough picks to. I assume they would have given away enough picks to secure.
So Collingwood's draft that year, they had Nick Daicos pick 4, Arlo Draper pick 45, delisted after 2 years. Cooper Murley pick 49, delisted after 2 years.
Wow.
And the forgotten man was pick 52, still on the list, Harvey Harrison, recovering from an ACL injury. So Daicos and... So maybe we need to ask Harvey, is he still hanging out with you or not?
Wow.
Yeah, let's get on to him.
This clubman is just a complete shambles given who we're getting in now every week. But I'm just going to completely go against modern footy. We've already got Max Gawn in the ruck, but I'm going to throw another ruck into the team who also can't play another position. But I just think Jared Witts deserves to be in there. Whenever we talk about the best rucks, there's obviously been quite a few this year. We've got a lot of talent trying to make this All-Australian team. I don't think Jared Witts is going to be there, clearly. But going up against that very physical Brisbane duo, he had another 43 hit-outs. I think he's still underrated, Jared Witts, when you talk about the best rucks in the game. He's been doing it for a long time. I just think giving those Suns mids first use on Saturday was huge. And the old saying, the bigs don't get any smaller. He was unbelievable for the Suns. Continues to play really well. So let's try and get a second ruck in. Although seeing these nominations, there's just no way he's going to get picked over Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller or Nick Daicos, you'd think.
I think the best clubman team, should have a couple of rucks. They're renowned as being good blokes.
Yep. Yeah, there you go. JJ, a bit of a chuckle there.
Maybe we'll do a ruck only week.
Yeah.
Who were the rucks in your career, JJ?
Sauce Jacobs was the main ruck I
is he a good bloke
played with. One of the greats.
Yep.
One of the greats. So he'd get into the team if he was eligible. He was presenting retrospective showdown medals on Saturday night, I saw. So he's a 3-time showdown medalist. He likes to remind us, which is pretty meaningless if you ask me. It just means you got best on ground 3 times.
Were they doing retrospective ones? I missed that.
Yeah,
How far?
Mark Bickley, Brett James and Mark Rasciuto got them, I think, from an Adelaide perspective. Not sure who got them from Port. But, yeah, they did it for Anzac Day, so I guess why not?
Yeah. Well, did they just not hand the award out for the first few showdowns?
There just wasn't a medal up until a certain date. The medal obviously came in at whatever it was, 2005 or whatever. So, hand them out. I'm not sure what the panel was. They would have had to sit through the game and watch the game again and hand it out. I presume they watched the game. I mean, you could just check the stats. But
I reckon they just gone AFL tables or footy wire and made a call.
That'd be a bit shallow.
Did you go close to any showdown medals?
I had one in the back pocket at half time one day and then barely got a kick in the second half. So, I thought I was a bit stiff in the one that the goal that may or may not have hit the post. I thought I was a bit stiff in that one, but I never could quite secure a showdown medal.
I think that's everything I got. Although, Patto, you did come in late. Is there any other nuggets you've got for us? Adams Aura extended. Adams Aura up late. Anything else for us?
I backed the Giants at 3/4 time the other night to win the flag.
Did you?
What price did you get?
13.
Okay. That's pretty good.
Into 10.
I mean, but we were just talking about...
Have we seen enough? I think the year's done.
Well, we were just talking about the logjam and Brisbane now potentially looking a bit shaky with a tougher run. Like, there's a chance the Giants make the 4 now when we were talking about them struggling to scrape into the 8.
Oh, well, they've just got to beat the Dogs, but no Toby, obviously.
Patto and I have never doubted them. We've stuck fat.
I have doubt. So my take on the Giants is... because I've seen this movie like 7 times now, is until the siren goes on grand final day and they're ahead, I won't believe in them.
Yeah, it's sort of win though that it was emphatic.
It was, but look, I don't think the Swans have been like the Swans' last few wins against the Saints and North. I think they were a bit of a false. Are they still in it or are they not still in it? And I just think last year, 2 massive leads in the qualifying final and the semi-final, go out in straight sets. The prelim the year before, you can't really knock them. I think they played pretty well, and like the Pies were the best team in the comp that year. I've just seen it happen quite a lot, and I just until they prove it, I can't. I'd have 3 or 4 other teams ahead of them.
Yeah, and that's fair enough because it's pretty close. But I think they're to get yourself in those positions takes a fair bit of effort and intensity and skill and capability. So I wouldn't want to run into them anyway. If I was a team up and about, then they're not a team I really want to run into because they're a bit mercurial, and Stringer and Toby and Cadman and these guys can do nothing, but they can also kick 3 each and steamroll you. So they're a bit scary, the Giants.
Absolutely. Anything else for anyone?
No, I'm good. I'm looking forward to listening to the first half of this pod.
I think we didn't touch on the Western Derby, but there was nothing to see over there. Hayden Young continues to remind us that he's
pretty unbelievable.
One of the best in the game, certainly Fremantle's most important player, and the less said about Friday night, the better. Good to see the astronaut. For someone who's been hammered, the astronaut's been hammered, and largely by 1 or 2 people, but he's got 45 goals. He's top 10 in the AFL for contested marks, top 10 in the AFL for marks inside forward 50, and he's going to kick 50 plus on the season. Not a bad year.
Absolutely, and I feel like he plays better when there's either no Jamara or no. Like I think the 3 of them just hasn't worked.
Yeah, they all do. Yeah. They all benefit. Whichever 2 are out there, they all benefit from not having the third. And English does too, because English can get forward. So I just can't wait for Thursday night footy. It's just going to be huge. I think the Dogs lose. I'm happy to just say, nah, you just can't. You won't make it, or even if you do, you won't matter.
Make up the numbers. Good stuff. Well, Patto, you listened to the first half of the podcast. Basically, a lot of the stuff you touched on, we'd already spoken about. So to the listeners out there that heard us talk about North Melbourne's coaching and a few other things for the second time.
Well, you have to do me like that. You've done me cold there.
Yeah, no. Well, if you looked at the rundown, you would have seen.
Fair enough. Nah, it's all good. People loved it the first time. They'll love it the second time.
Exactly. Good work, Link. Well done, JJ. Patto.
Ciao. Ciao. Bye.